Hi, my name is Savannah Seagraves, and this is my presentation over weather and meteorology. So some of the things that I'm going to be talking about today are the formation of precipitation and the differences between rain, snow, sleet, and hail, the four different types of fronts and the weather associated with them, and why airlifting is important and the process of it. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the formation of precipitation. Precipitation is a part of the water cycle. Precipitation is formed when water or ice droplets in clouds become heavy enough to fall to the ground. So there are two ways that precipitation is formed. The picture on the left is a picture of the Bergeron process, and the picture on the right is a picture of a collision coalescence process. So the Bergeron process is when ice crystals and water droplets exist in clouds at the same time. The water droplets that are in the clouds are supercooled, which means they freeze when they come into contact with other objects, or in this case with ice crystals. Collision coalescence is when water droplets in clouds become bigger than 20 micrometers, and then they start to collide with one another. Once they start colliding with one another and become heavy enough, they fall to the earth. So there are different types of precipitation. And some of the ones I'll be talking about are snow, rain, sleet, and hail. Snow is created in the Bergeron process when the water droplets and the ice crystals combine, and then the ice crystals continue combining and fall as snow. Rain is created in the collision process, and that's when the water droplets keep colliding into one another and then become big enough to fall. Sleet is a type of rain that is created in the collision, but sleet freezes in the air before it hits the ground. Hail is created when there are water droplets in clouds that are high enough in the air where the temperatures are below freezing. And then those freezing droplets collide into each other until they're big enough to form hail, and then they fall. The next thing I'm going to be talking about are fronts. There are four different types of fronts: cold, warm, occluded, and stationary. Cold fronts typically bring in cold air, rain, wind, and snow. The precipitation that can come from cold fronts typically moves on once the cold front has passed. Cold fronts can also produce some of the strongest storms. Warm fronts bring warm temperatures, cumulus clouds, precipitation, usually rain, wind, and the storms that warm fronts create are usually less violent. This type of front can also create fog. An occluded front is when a cold front overtakes a warm front. An occluded front is similar to a cold front, where the storms that it creates are very strong. Occluded fronts can also bring colder temperature and heavier precipitation. A stationary front is when warm and cold air meet, but they never cross, and they typically stay parallel from each other. Stationary fronts can cause precipitation like rain or snow, and when this happens, it can rain or snow for several days. Stationary fronts are also similar to warm fronts, where the storms that are created are not very strong. These fronts can also create fog. Now I'm going to be talking about airlifting. There are four different methods of airlifting, and those are orographic, convective, convergent, and frontal. Picture A is a picture of convergent airlifting. This is when air comes in from multiple directions, and it causes that air to be pushed upward. Picture B is a picture of conventional airlifting. This is when air can cross a warm spot in the ground, and then that air is caused to be pushed upwards. Picture C is orographic lifting, and this is when warm air is forced to go over a barrier such as a mountain, and then that air is lifted upwards. And then the air that comes down off the leeward side of the mountain is cool. And the last picture, picture D, is a picture of frontal air. This is when cold and warm air collide, and this is also what creates our fronts. And this collision of air also causes that air to be pushed upwards. So airlifting is important because it's what causes the clouds to form. When any type of airlifting happens, the air is pushed upwards. There is water molecules within the air, and once those water molecules hit a certain spot in the atmosphere called the dew point, they start to condense, and once they condense enough, that is what creates clouds.